Welcome to Portsmouth Cathedral. I'm Catherine.
And I'm Catherine, and this is Pompey Sundays at Home.
Hello.
Hello
And welcome.
to Pompey Sundays at Home.
Very soon, when lockdown eases a bit, we're going to be having a new type of service at the Cathedral called Pompey Sundays. It'll be a relaxed, cafe-style church service where we'll come together for conversation and prayer and to think about some important things. And until we can do that in person, we're bringing the Cathedral to you like this. Today it's Mothering Sunday and a time to give thanks for our families, for our mothers, the people that have taken care of us throughout our lives. And in the past year, we've really been very conscious of all the ways people have cared for each other through the COVID crisis and the pandemic. Later on, we're going to be hearing from somebody who's been at the heart of that caring. A senior sister at QA is going to be talking about her experiences of caring for COVID patients. But in the meantime, we're going to talk a little bit about caring for each other. Mother's Day is a celebration, but sometimes it can be a bit of a tricky day for people, can't it?
Yes, I suppose this year particularly tricky for an awful lot of people. There are so many people who've lost people of all ages, aren't there? So that's really hard. But also every year it's very hard if you've perhaps lost a parent, lost a child, don't have children and have longed for them, or a myriad of other ways in which you might find it difficult. And so I think we're really conscious that we want to celebrate, but we also want to honour and acknowledge the complexity of those feelings in what we're talking about today. Yeah. Mothering Sunday happens in the middle of the season of Lent, doesn't it? And so it's a time when we think about being in the wilderness with Jesus. So we have those kind of complex feelings anyway. But traditionally, it's also known as Refreshment Sunday. It's a time when if you've given something up for Lent, you might actually have whatever it is today, possibly, if you want to. It's just time to pause and take a breath. And actually, this time last year, I remember Mothering Sunday was the last Sunday we were in the cathedral. We were already live streaming. And the next day, lockdown happened. So it's a pretty poignant day for us. But it's a good time to kind of pause and reflect on all that great network of caring relationships that we can have for people, whether we're able to see them at the moment or not, because there's so many different ways of caring.
There have been so many examples, haven't there, of wonderful acts of care in the last year. When you think about some of the things, I remember seeing a hugging kind of shower mat that you could put your arms through to hug somebody. Yes. And the person that came up with that, it's just such wonderful creativity. But to be able to care for someone and feel their physical presence, such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And the way that care home workers and people have gone to, stay in a hotel or lived in the home with residents rather than risking infecting people at home. It's been a tremendous testament to everyone's care and generosity towards each other, hasn't it?
And there have been some cases that have hit the headlines, but so much that hasn't, so much depth of care that we'll never know about that's been going on, and a real reordering of priorities, I think, hasn't it? Some of the kind of least glamorous, smallest things have suddenly become really important.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So this is a really good day to pause and reflect on that, and also to hope and pray that we can hang on to that, because things are looking more hopeful now than they did certainly last year, where we're starting to emerge a bit. And so it would be really good to hang on to that, as well as honouring what's gone on.
And when you think about it, caring is really at the heart of the Christian message, isn't it? God, the thing about you should love your neighbour as yourself, that's really one of the bedrocks of the Christian faith.
Yeah.
And we've been reminded of how crucial that is to everyone's well-being and life and well-being in general, I think, these past 12 months. So.
Yeah. And I think for me, one of the really essential things about our faith that really speaks to this time is that although it's wonderful to be happy, and we're all longing to be happy again, actually, this is not about happiness. This is about joy, which is a bit different, very different, in fact, isn't it? And it's about the kind of joy that you can feel through that connectedness of caring, even through terrible pain. Mm-hmm. And it really, the wilderness and the cross and the hope that we have through that speaks to all of that as well, in the midst of that caring.
Absolutely.
We're very proud to live in a naval city where we have Chinooks also looking after us.
I'm sure they flew over about the same time last week. I don't know whether it would be audible, will it? Because it was so noisy for us, it might not have been picked up by the microphone.
Now we're going to hear a reading which is going to help us to think some more about that Christian idea of caring for others. It's from Matthew's Gospel, and it's going to be read for us by Jen Todd.
A reading from Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 40. Jesus said to his disciples, "When the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people from one another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats, and he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at the left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, 'Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me.' Then the righteous will answer him, 'Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?' And the king will answer them, 'Truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me.'"
We hear Jesus talking a lot about the kingdom of heaven, and that used to really puzzle the people he was talking to, and they would ask him what the kingdom of heaven was like, and he would often describe it in stories, and the glimpses we get show that the kingdom of heaven, of which he is the king and the Lord, actually turns our ideas of power upside down. In the kingdom of heaven, vulnerability and service are key. And our ideas of that kind of crushing power and dominance and might that we often think about in the world today are just completely turned on their head. And I think this reading really shows us that, because this is Jesus saying, if you do these things, if you give someone a drink, if you give someone who's hungry food, if you visit them, if you care for them, you're caring for me. You're caring for me, the king of this kingdom. You'll see my face in their face. And that's an extraordinary thing, and I think really speaks to us during these times particularly, but throughout our lives. I remember Mother Teresa, who of course was famous for caring for people in Calcutta and has now been made a saint, said, we can't all do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And I think that's what really shines out of this reading. The small things. He's not talking about big things. He's talking about giving someone a drink or visiting someone, or perhaps at the moment when we can't always visit, picking up the phone. Just those little things. Actually, by doing that, you're honouring him. It's as if you're doing that for him. You're living out that love that God pours in to us. It's that giving away of yourself in order to love other people that Jesus shows us how to do in his life and, of course, in his death, by actually pouring himself out by dying on the cross and then giving us the hope of new life that lies beyond it. I remember being very struck by a story that you might have heard about a man walking along the beach. I don't know whether we get starfish here. We might. Mm-hmm. Yeah, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Wonderful, because I'm just going to have a look. This man was throwing back starfish. Hundreds of them had washed up on the beach, and he was just throwing back a few. And someone said to him, well, what's the point of doing that? There's hundreds of them. You're not going to make any difference. And he said, well, it's made a difference to this one. And I think that's what Jesus is talking about, isn't it? Make a difference just however you can, and you're showing the love of God to other people. And we're now going to hear from someone who's been making a difference day by day through this time.
That's right. Earlier this week, I caught up with Catriona Matton, who is a senior sister at QA Hospital on the critical care unit. She also worships at St James's Church in Milton. And she talked to me about her experiences of caring for COVID patients this past year. I'm delighted to be here with Catriona Matton, who is a senior sister on the critical care unit at QA and you've obviously been seeing a lot of what's been going on through the pandemic. So thank you so much for coming on and talking to us a bit about your experience. Perhaps we could start with your role and what's changed about it, perhaps a bit of your situation.
So my main role, I'm a senior sister on the critical care unit at QA. In normal times, I run a service of outreach nurses. So we would go from the critical care unit out onto the wards to see deteriorating patients, to try and prevent them needing to come into intensive care or critical care, or move them to the appropriate place. When the pandemic hit in both the first and second waves, my service was closed because we're all trained and qualified critical care nurses, and so our skills and services were required within the critical care unit due to the large increase in numbers of our critical care patients that we had coming through. So it's been from a work and professional way, it's been quite a strange year. Lots of shift swapping, changing from days to nights, lots of extra flexibility so that we could provide the best service for our patients and support for our other members of staff that we could. So it's been very strange. And then in the first wave, days off, very busy, queuing for food shopping and all the other things that everyone else was doing to fit in around hours and extra hours. So it's taken me back to my grassroots a bit from a nursing perspective, back to working full-time on the critical care unit, and challenging and very interesting. It's, I think, taught me a lot about myself and lots of the people that I work with as well.
So what's it been like caring for COVID patients through this?
I think when it was at its height, you almost just went into automatic. You didn't really have time to really think about it too much, especially when you were at work. As one of the senior sisters, each day when you went in, you were in charge of an area within critical care, and to provide the number of beds that were required, we expanded our service, as every intensive care unit in the country did. So we were working in areas that weren't primarily designed for intensive care. We had people coming out of retirement, people coming back to work in intensive care who had moved on to other jobs, either within our trust or other trusts. We had nurses volunteering to come and work on intensive care from the wards, and a lot of our colleagues from the operating theatres came and worked with us. So it was, you almost didn't have time to really think about it, and you got on with it. It's been quite difficult because we haven't been able to do what I would say is in normal times would be just our normal care, but the nice things for patients, like being able to wash their hair, paint their nails, only for the ladies, not often for the boys. So it's been the care that our patients need, but we haven't been able to do all the extras necessarily that we love. And that's why a lot of us have stayed within intensive care, because you have that time to give those extras. It's been very difficult because, of course, we've had no families visiting. The only time, really the only time that we've had families in is for end of life care. In the first wave, that didn't happen as well, which put a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on our junior nurses, our bedside nurses. So as a senior nurse, you're there to support them. The second wave, that's been a bit different because families have been able to come in for end of life, but only if they are, if the family members are well, asymptomatic. And of course, a lot of our COVID positive patients, it's not just them within their household that's had COVID. So some of the patients have had family members in other wards. Some have had family members who are at home unwell. So sharing information that has been quite challenging because it's all been done over the phone. And it's quite difficult sometimes for people to understand when they can't actually see what's happening with their family member, and all the monitoring and the tubes and everything. It's a difficult concept to get your head round when you can't see them.
Sure,
and
yeah.
Trying to explain that to somebody can be very difficult. So that's been very hard. Looking after everybody else at work, so it's not just the patients you're looking after, each other as senior team members, making sure, you know, that we look after each other. We look after our doctors look after us, our physios, the people who, as I said, have sort of put themselves forward to come and work in an area that's completely different. So it's been very draining, and it's often then on your days off, when you come home, that you have time then to sit and work through it, digest what's been going on, because it's been so busy that on a day-to-day basis when you're at work, you often don't have that opportunity. Also being at home, still running my household, looking after everything else, doing the shopping and housework and everything else. And then I think, as especially a lot of women tend to do, I always seem to be a little bit at the bottom. So it's been really important as well, not only for caring and looking after other people, but to care and look after myself, to allow me then to be able to do that care for other people. So my self-care's, I think, been very important as well over the last year.
What kind of things have you done for yourself?
I've done a lot of having nice baths and cups of tea and reading books, lots of walking along the seafront. I'm very lucky I live near the sea, so that's great. And then my best friend, who I do lots of crazy things with, when we could get together for socially distanced meeting last May, we would go down to the beach and we would swim. And then her crazy idea was that why didn't we try to carry on doing it all year round? And that's been fantastic. It's been so great. And I think being outside, because obviously I work inside. I go into work at about 6:30 in the morning, and often we wouldn't be coming out till 9:30ish in the evening. So being outside, having fresh air, having that wonderful summer with all that sunshine, which was great.
It was, yeah.
That was really nice. The experience of the swimming and the water, and through all weathers. I was down there in a little light sprinkling of snow in January, which was great. All the way through to roastingly hot days, big waves where we've reverted to being kids again and leaping up and down in the waves and giggling. So it's been a wonderful release for a lot of stress and tension and emotion, because that has to come out. You can't, unless you can look after yourself, you can't look after other people.
No, absolutely.
So that's been my that's definitely been my, I think, my lifeline, and having my buddy Nadia with me as a little bit of a sounding board and a debrief has kept me sane. But most people that know me well would maybe question that, because I do daft things like swimming in the sea in freezing cold weather, but that's been great. So the self-care of myself, and going quiet places. It was great in the first wave when we had open church to just be able to go down to St James's and just sit there in quiet and calm, having gone from noise and lots of frenetic activity and energy to just have that calm peace that just was wonderful. It was so good. That was great.
It was great to hear from Catriona about the way that the staff within the hospital cared for each other as well as caring for the patients, and how they had to care for themselves in order to be able to do the caring of the people that they were looking after. It was very moving to listen to her, I'm sure you'll agree. And now we're going to have some prayers led by the young people's group who are preparing for confirmation at the moment.
Loving God, we give thanks for all who care for us, who have encouraged us and helped us grow.
You have forgiven us.
Who have cared for us when we were unwell.
You have supported us when times were hard.
Who have laughed with us and loved us.
Who have challenged us.
Who have told us about you, nurturing God, we give thanks. Amen.
Well done. Amen. So thank you to the Young People's Group for doing the prayers today.
On Tuesday week, the 23rd of March, it's going to be a special day of commemorating the first anniversary of lockdown and a particular opportunity to remember people we've lost and to give thanks for all the people who've cared for us all over this time. The cathedral is going to have extended opening hours that day from 10 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock in the evening. And you can come in whenever you like, say a prayer, light a candle, and just take a chance to reflect and be still. You'd be very welcome. We'll have a service, a Eucharist at 12 o'clock, evensong at 5:30, and Compline at 8:30. And you'd be very welcome to any or all of those as well. Do come and join us.
If you've enjoyed watching today, please do share this video with your friends. It would be great to spread the word about what's going on and have more people come and share it with us. We'll be back again on Easter Day, the 4th of April, with a special celebratory edition of Pompey Sundays at Home. We look forward to seeing you then.
Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.